completely criminal. Anthony Watson leads outrage over Damian Penaud's Six Nations omission. Few selection decisions in modern international rugby have ignited debate quite as fiercely as Fabien Galthié's call to leave Damian Penaud out of France's squad for the 2026 Six Nations. When Les Bleus unveiled their wider group ahead of the championship, the absence of their all-time leading try scorer landed like a thunderclap across the rugby world. That Penaud's omission was not just surprising, it was seismic. A player who has crossed the whitewash 40 times in Test rugby, averaging an extraordinary 0.68 tries per match, has been sidelined in favor of younger, less experienced options. For many observers, the decision appeared to contradict both logic and precedent. For others, it represented the ruthless evolution of a French side determined to refine every detail ahead of the next Rugby World Cup cycle. But for former England and British and Irish Lions winger Anthony Watson, there was no nuance required. Appearing on the For the Love of Rugby podcast, Watson did not mince his words, branding the decision completely criminal and outrageous. Language that quickly reverberated through social media and fan forums, that a decision that cuts against the numbers on paper. Penaud's exclusion is almost impossible to justify. Since making his Test debut in 2017, the Clermont and Bordeaux Beagles winger has been one of the most devastating finishers international rugby has seen in the professional era. His strike rate places him among the elite, not just in French history, but globally. More than that, Penaud has consistently delivered on the biggest stages: Six Nations deciders, World Cups, autumn tests, and Grand Slam campaigns. He has been a central figure in France's resurgence under Galthié, a coach who has built his reign on clarity of roles, cohesion, and trust. And yet, when the squad was announced, Penaud was nowhere to be seen. The official explanation points to defensive shortcomings, specifically his positioning under the high ball and his kick chase work, areas that have been scrutinized closely during France's recent campaigns. With the emergence of the electric Louis Bielle-Biarrey on the opposite wing, Galthié appears to believe France no longer need two out-and-out strike wingers, instead prioritizing balance, aerial security, and system discipline to IT is a rationale that makes sense in theory. But as Watson was quick to point out, theory rarely wins championships on its own. Anthony Watson. The rewards far outweigh the risks. Watson, himself one of the most complete wingers of his generation, approached the debate from the perspective of elite performance rather than tactical purity. Completely criminal, he said bluntly. Honestly, I think it's just outrageous. He's France's top Six Nations try scorer, and to leave him out makes absolutely no sense. The strength of Watson's reaction lies not only in his status as a former international winger, but in the type of player he was. Renowned for his work rate, defensive reliability, and aerial competence, Watson understands the demands of the modern wing better than most. His defense of Penaud, therefore, carries extra weight. Yes, they've got some good other wingers, Watson continued, but in my opinion, none to the level of Damian Penaud, none as proven as him. Watson acknowledged the areas of concern, but dismissed them as marginal compared to Penaud's overall impact. I'm not making out like the kick chase isn't a serious part of the game, he said. But when it's something as minor as that, with everything else he brings to the game, I just think it's very harsh. At the heart of Watson's argument is a fundamental rugby principle. Exceptional players win matches. Systems can create opportunities, but individuals finish them, and few do so as reliably as Penaud. The rise of Louis Bielle-Biarrey and a shift in philosophy. One of the key factors behind Penaud's exclusion is the rapid ascent of Louis Bielle-Biarrey. Still in his early 20s, the Bordeaux winger has become one of the most exciting talents in world rugby, combining searing pace with intelligent running lines and improved defensive awareness. With Bielle-Biarrey now firmly established, France appear less reliant on Penaud's finishing power. Instead, Galthié seems to be seeking a more balanced back three, one that can dominate aerially, defend space, and adapt seamlessly to the kicking duels that increasingly define Test rugby. From a coaching perspective, this makes sense. From a fan and former player perspective, however, it feels like overthinking. France have long prided themselves on embracing flair within structure. Penaud, for all his imperfections, embodies that identity. His unpredictability forces defenses to hesitate, opens space for others, and creates tries that simply should not exist. Removing that threat entirely is a bold gamble, particularly in a Six Nations that is shaping up to be one of the most competitive in years. Dan Cole offers a counterpoint not everyone shares Watson's outrage. Former England prop Dan Cole, Watson's old Leicester Tigers teammate, offer a more pragmatic and characteristically blunt perspective on the same podcast. He's fanning around in Europe, isn't he? Cole said, referring to Penaud's club performances. Like there are certain times when he could have scored tries, and he's like flicking it inside. Cole's criticism cuts to a recurring theme in Penaud's career: his willingness to improvise, even when simpler options are available. For some, this is genius. For others, it is unnecessary risk. Part of me loves that, Cole admitted, because that's just so out there as a character. But if you're a French team and you're building, and you've got someone going rogue who's just trying to get assists rather than scoring, Cole suggested that France's selection reflects a desire for control and internal competition rather than sentiment. Do you not think there's a potential there to actually go to Théo Attissogbe? He added. He's been brilliant. When he came in, he scored twice. It's like we've got a guy who's going to push. Attissogbe's selection symbolizes France's willingness to back youth and momentum over reputation. It also reinforces Galthié's message that no one, not even record breakers, is guaranteed a place. If his nose is out of joint, so what? Perhaps the most telling part of Cole's argument was his unapologetic stance on man management. We can bring Penaud back in at some point whenever it's going to be good to go, he said. And if his nose is out of joint, so what? That sentiment reflects a modern coaching approach increasingly prevalent at the elite level: selection as leverage. By leaving Penaud out, Galthié sends a clear signal about standards, discipline, and conformity to the system. But IT is a tactic that has worked before. French rugby's revival over the past decade has been built on ruthless decision-making, cultural reset, and an insistence that individual brilliance must serve the collective. The risk, of course, is alienating a match winner at France's new look back, three in Penaud's absence. France have opted for a refreshed backline configuration. Théo Attissogbe takes his place on the wing, while the highly versatile Calvin Gorges has been named as backup across the backfield. The selection aligns with Galthié's preference for adaptability and bench impact, reflected again in France's decision to persist with a 6-2 split among forwards and backs. That approach demands enormous physical output from the starting back three, particularly under the high ball, and in kick return scenarios, IT also leaves little margin for error. Without Penaud's proven finishing ability, France may need to work harder and longer for their tries. A potential issue against disciplined defenses like Ireland and England that a gamble with short-term stakes. The Six Nations is not a development tournament. It is short, unforgiving, and ruthlessly exposed to form fluctuations. One narrow loss can derail a title challenge, and one missed chance can define a campaign. In that context, leaving out a proven try-scorer feels like an unnecessary risk. Watson's argument resonates because it reflects the mindset of players who have lived those moments. When margins are tight, coaches often turn to the players they trust to conjure something from nothing. For now, Galthié is betting that structure, balance, and youth can replace instinct and experience. Whether that bet pays off will be one of the defining storylines of the 2026 Six Nations. And if France find themselves chasing a title in the final rounds, desperately searching for a moment of magic out wide, the shadow of Damian Penaud will loom large over every decision.